Is that what's happening?
I come from where voting is about as primitive as it's possible to be, where you actually put an X in pencil in a piece of paper, and there are other ways of voting if you're an absentee, but that's the way that we vote. We don't have any form of electronic voting, and I rather admire India, a much bigger and much more complex democracy, for the steps that it's taken to introduce electronic voting, which has made voting much more secure. And I've talked about this with Yaqub Qureshi, a former Chief Election Commissioner, a man of great integrity, and he absolutely insists that EVMs cannot be tampered with. Then there's no connectivity issue. Yes, they could be stolen and replaced or something like that, which is why they're guarded in strong rooms. But I also have to bear in mind that we have now found an issue in this election which has brought together 22 opposition parties. It is hugely ironic that it's after all the voting has taken place. I don't know whether they are making an issue of this because they have some real misgivings or because they're looking for an issue to coalesce around in this deeply awkward period between the exit polls and the counting. If they win their argument that the tallying of these paper slips with the electronic voting has to take place before the votes are counted, we're in for a very, very long day on Thursday.
Plus, we've had a history of paper ballots in India, and we know what happened. We have those videos from Bihar of people running away with those boxes, of stamping those ballots. What is the alternative? Which is, by this logic, no election is ever going to be fair.
No, for a country as vast as India, with so many people voting, 900 million, I think electronic voting machines are the best answer. And as Andrew said, it's very difficult to tamper with. I mean, there might be some malfunctioning, but on a large scale, it's impossible. But every losing party will accuse the EVM of cheating, malfunctioning. But you know, I think they're the best answer in India for the number of people. There are 11 million people, 11 million manpower for this election. Can you believe? 11 million people helped in running this election. That's one person for 100. For every 100 people, there's one manpower. It's enormous. So electronic voting machines are really the best solution for India.
Indeed. And look at the numbers, Walter. 67% Indians voted. It's a record. And the number of voters was much higher this time compared to previous elections. So close to 60 crore people stopped what they were doing, went out to cast their ballot. And now all these parties come together and say, maybe your vote didn't go where you wanted it to go. So you shouldn't count on what you did or this entire election process. Is this an unfortunate turn that this election has taken?
I'm not surprised. I mean, they have to sort of come up with some reason why they lost, and this is one that they've used. There's also an effort to get together. Whether they continue after the 23rd, I think some will, but you know, unless you have proven, you know, examples of that, and I haven't actually seen that in the press. I mean, there are the charges, but you know, where is the actual, you know, corruption of the voting machine? A couple have had, and there's only been a couple that I've seen have had problems, and not on a massive scale. What hasn't happened yet here, because we're dealing now in a world with electronic voting machines of the cyber world, is charges of external corruption, as you've had in the U.S. Have the Russians and the Chinese, are they intervening? And we just had this massive study that was done that the Russians did make an effort. Will neighbors unfriendly to India, or you know, try to intervene in India's election by trying to sort of upset the way that the voting machine? I haven't seen that anywhere. I hope I'm not giving anybody an idea what they should make charges of. But you know, this is a cyber world where that's an issue. You know, is to protect, you know, the machinery from external intervention.
Right. So the argument that the opposition parties were making has also been sort of shifted. First they said that these machines have been tampered with. Now they say we do not trust how and where they're being stored. So they're changing the machines, not necessarily tampering with them. And the likes of H.D. Kumaraswamy are already pulling out from such meetings. Do you believe that this is just a controversy that'll die after 2 days, or do you think that they will keep on pushing with this?
Well, I mean, they've got 36 hours to keep going. I mean, it's a bit like a kind of detective show where the screenwriters are kind of writing it while filming is going on. I mean, I'm with Walter as well. I mean, there's a sort of 22-person jury, but there is absolutely no smoking gun at this point. The other thing, but the bigger point I'd like to make, Palki, is that you know, one forgets here that there's a certain sort of sanctity to democracy. And it is very unhelpful to chip away at some of the fundamentals of democratic infrastructure. I'm not wanting to get on my high horse here, but come the 24th, everyone's going to have to dust themselves off for the next electoral cycle. And if you've actually started by that, by sowing doubt in the mind of the voters, it's a bad place for everyone.
Indeed. And the fact that Rahul Gandhi questioned the same EVMs just before Assembly elections last December, 5 days before the results, and then after the results were out, nothing was said about whether EVMs can be trusted. So it's an argument of convenience.
Well, as we've said, it's a thing that sore losers might be tempted to do because at least, you know, it attracts attention and there is clearly an element of doubt in the public mind. I think the difficulty that the Election Commission has, they're only going to meet tomorrow morning to work out some of the mechanics for how the count will take place the following day, which feels a little bit close to the bone. And as I understand it, the VVPAT slips are designed as a confidence-building measure so that people can have some confidence that their vote is being registered electronically correctly. But this tallying of the two, it's an enormous task, and inevitably there's going to be some discrepancy. You're going to have slips which are illegible or which have got chewed up or which have been eaten by ants, or which have gone missing. You're never going to have an absolute tally. So what happens then? My understanding is that the Election Commission doesn't have a clear protocol for what happens if there is a failure to fully tally.
Would you say that the one party that got targeted throughout this election without them contesting was the Election Commission?
Which party?
The Election Commission.
Oh, yeah. But you know, I remember there was a gentleman called Navin Chola, I think. You know, he was the election commissioner many years ago, and he stood there accusing the present election commissioner to be partial, but he was very partial himself. And actually, when he resigned, when his term ended, he joined the Congress. So, you know, I don't think the Congress can accuse this particular election commission to be biased, because I think he's been quite above the fray and been quite decent.
Indeed.